Ladies and gentlemen, to understand how emotional non-reactivity serves as a form of psychological disruption, particularly in the dynamic between a super empath and a narcissist, we have to look at what drives both individuals at the level of neurobiology and behavior. Narcissists tend to operate from a dysregulated inner world. Though they often appear confident or even arrogant on the surface, much of their behavior is driven by a fragile sense of self that is highly dependent on external validation. This dynamic is supported by specific mechanisms in the brain, particularly the dopaminergic reward system. When a narcissist receives admiration, attention, or even fear and emotional chaos, their brain responds with a release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter most closely associated with reward and motivation. In essence, the narcissist becomes neurologically conditioned to seek out environments and people who offer this form of stimulation. Now enter the super empath. A super empath is someone whose nervous system is highly attuned to the emotions of others, likely due to a heightened activity in the mirror neuron system, which enables them to feel what others are feeling. While this sensitivity can make them vulnerable in toxic relational dynamics, it can also become a profound strength when paired with emotional regulation. The key lies in the ability of the super empath to choose their response rather than be enslaved by emotional reactivity. Here's where the concept of emotional non-reactivity becomes powerful. When a narcissist attempts to provoke an emotional reaction, whether through gaslighting, blame, shifting, or dramatic displays, they are essentially attempting to hijack the other person's nervous system. They rely on predictable reactions, anger, tears, fear, or guilt. These responses provide the narcissist with two things. First, they reassert control over the emotional tone of the interaction. Second, they trigger the narcissist's reward system, reinforcing their behavior and increasing the likelihood that they will use similar tactics again. But when the empath remains non-reactive, not numb, but calm and internally regulated, something very different happens. The narcissist's attempt to provoke fails to produce the expected outcome. From a neuroscience perspective, this creates what we refer to as a prediction error, a mismatch between the anticipated input and the actual response. Prediction errors are deeply uncomfortable because they challenge the brain's sense of control and certainty. In relationships, this can be destabilizing for someone who is used to controlling others through emotional manipulation. On a deeper level, this lack of reaction also impacts the narcissist's neurochemical patterns. Without a strong emotional response from the other person, the narcissist doesn't receive the dopamine hit they were unconsciously seeking. Over time, this can cause what is essentially a form of neurological withdrawal. Just like a person withdrawing from a substance, the narcissist begins to feel discomfort, irritability, even rage, not because the empath has done anything aggressive, but precisely because they haven't reacted at all. The absence of emotional feedback becomes a kind of silent mirror, forcing the narcissist to sit with their own discomfort, a state they are highly motivated to avoid. Emotional non-reactivity, then, becomes a biologically disruptive force. It interrupts the reward-seeking cycle that fuels narcissistic behavior. It also forces the narcissist to confront a fundamental truth. They are not in control of the other person's emotional state. For individuals who have built their entire sense of self around external control, this realization is not just inconvenient, it's psychologically threatening. Now, for the super empath, this non-reactivity doesn't come easily. It often requires training the nervous system to tolerate discomfort without collapsing into reaction. Breathwork, mindfulness, sleep, deep rest, NSDR, and deliberate cold exposure are tools that can help build this capacity. These practices strengthen the parasympathetic nervous system, what we might call the braking system, of the body, allowing the empath to maintain a calm state even in the face of provocation. When used regularly, they increase heart rate variability, reduce cortisol levels, and improve the body's ability to return to baseline after stress. The result is a kind of emotional sovereignty. The empath no longer plays the role the narcissist has scripted for them. They are not drawn into emotional chaos, nor are they compelled to fix, explain, or defend. Instead, they offer what the narcissist cannot process: silence, stillness, or neutral observation. These states are threatening not because they're aggressive, but because they are immune. The narcissist, in their constant search for emotional reaction, finds themselves staring into an emotional void, and in that void, their tactics lose power. To be clear, this isn't about revenge or control. The goal isn't to win against the narcissist, but to disrupt the cycle of reactivity that feeds the unhealthy dynamic. Emotional non-reactivity is not passive. It is an active, disciplined form of nervous system regulation that allows the empath to stay connected to their own internal cues rather than being hijacked by someone else's. In doing so, they reclaim agency, not through force, but through mastery of their own biology. To understand how radical compassion becomes a form of psychological incongruence in the interaction between a super empath and a narcissist, we must first examine the expectations each party brings into the relationship, particularly from a neurological and behavioral standpoint. A narcissist operates within a framework of dominance, control, and emotional manipulation. Their behavioral scripts are often designed to create predictable reactions: fear, guilt, submission, admiration. These reactions are not just emotional victories for the narcissist. They serve as neurological reinforcement. The narcissist's reward system, primarily regulated by dopamine and cortisol, becomes attuned to responses that affirm their control or perceived superiority. A super empath, on the other hand, brings a different neurobiological orientation into the relationship. Their heightened sensitivity, due in part to the increased activity of mirror neurons and interoceptive awareness, enables them to deeply sense and internalize the emotions of others. This biological trait often leads empaths to adopt roles of caregiver, harmonizer, or fixer in relationships. For a narcissist, this emotional responsiveness can be a tempting target. The empath's compassion becomes something to exploit, an emotional reservoir the narcissist can tap into for validation, manipulation, or energy. However, when an empath evolves, when they become a super empath, not just sensitive, but also grounded, self-aware, and regulated, the dynamic begins to shift. Radical compassion emerges as a powerful, counterintuitive tool. Unlike enabling or codependent empathy, radical compassion is not about pleasing the narcissist, nor is it about fixing them. It is a deeply embodied form of understanding that sees the narcissist clearly, acknowledges their wounds, but does not take responsibility for healing them. This distinction is critical. It marks the difference between reactive compassion and intentional, disciplined compassion. For the narcissist, this is deeply disorienting. Their behavioral framework is built around a specific reward structure: provoke vulnerability, extract validation, and reassert dominance. When they project shame, anger, or superiority toward the empath, they expect either submission or retaliation. These are the responses that maintain the emotional economy of control. What they do not expect is a calm, clear-eyed, and boundaried form of compassion that neither resists nor submits. This response creates what's known in psychology as cognitive dissonance, a clash between expectation and reality that the brain struggles to reconcile. Neurologically, this dissonance produces discomfort. The narcissist's brain, anticipating a particular emotional loop, prepares for a predictable reward outcome. But when the empath does not react with fear, guilt, or deference, when instead they meet cruelty with calm, manipulation with truth, and chaos with clarity, the narcissist's predictive coding system fails. Their brain fires as though something is missing. This is the root of psychological incongruence. The empath is showing kindness, but not falling into control, demonstrating care, but not losing autonomy, staying open, but not absorbing toxicity. This response forces the narcissist to confront a reality that is often unbearable. The fact that someone can see them, truly see them, and not be afraid, not be seduced, and not be controlled. For individuals whose entire identity is structured around external power, this experience is not just frustrating, it's destabilizing. It creates what in neuroscience is referred to as a salience conflict. The narcissist's attention system, which typically prioritizes threats or opportunities for control, is now flooded with conflicting data. Compassion that doesn't yield power, connection that doesn't create dependency. Radical compassion also flips the energetic power dynamic. While the narcissist tries to impose fear, superiority, or shame, the super empath responds from a place of centeredness. This regulation of the autonomic nervous system, especially the parasympathetic branch, allows the empath to remain grounded even under psychological pressure. Through intentional breathwork, vagus nerve activation, or even mindfulness practices, the empath trains their body to remain calm, which in turn affects the interaction itself. Emotional calm becomes contagious, and in a setting where chaos is expected, calm becomes disruptive. In this context, compassion is not soft, it is strategic. It says, "I see your pain, but I won't carry it for you." It holds up a mirror not with judgment, but with neutrality. This kind of compassion denies the narcissist what they unconsciously crave, a reactive partner. Instead, it offers something they can neither exploit nor reject easily, genuine connection that comes with boundaries. Over time, this incongruence becomes unbearable for the narcissist. Their usual tools don't work. Their strategies produce silence, or worse, kindness. They may grow more agitated, confused, or desperate. Some will escalate attempts to provoke, while others may withdraw entirely, unable to understand why their usual methods yield no emotional payoff. For the super empath, this may be painful to witness, but it is also the point of liberation. They are no longer trapped in the reactive cycle. Their nervous system belongs to them, not to the narcissist. Ultimately, radical compassion doesn't destroy the narcissist, nor should it aim to. It simply removes the fuel. It deactivates the relational script, and in doing so, it offers both parties a rare opportunity, one to reflect and one to reclaim. The narcissist may never choose to face themselves, but the empath, through calm, boundaried compassion, reclaims authority over their own emotional landscape. And in that reclamation, psychological incongruence becomes the path to freedom.